Yes.
Could you address the question of Srila Prabhupada's books to some people seem to be like from a chauvinistic point of view? Some academics have criticized Srila Prabhupada's the way that he may refer to the ladies in some of the purports. And there's been some things on the internet that have come up in that regard. And is the BBT thinking about this and discussing these issues?
In general, Srila Prabhupada is presenting a worldview which is different from the modern worldview. We just heard that in America they've decided that same-sex marriage is not only legal, but it's a constitutional right. We have a different take on what's right. And our business in the BBT is not to make Srila Prabhupada politically correct or to fit him in nicely with progressive modern values, but to present him as he is and to let him say what he wants to say, to put forward what he wanted to say. And there's a story one time that there was a World's Fair up in Canada, and Prabhupada was in his room in New York, and an artist was painting a picture of Varahadev, the boar. And a letter came from Canada that they wanted some paintings because they were going to have an exhibition at this World's Fair. And the artist said, well, what painting should I send? Prabhupada said, you could send that one. Swamiji, I don't think they'll understand Lord Boar. Prabhupada said, they may understand or not understand. Send it. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada gave the example. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that I've come to bring fruits, to sell fruits. And the price is really cheap. And people may take it or not take it. But Prabhupada said everybody took it. So we have our culture, our views, and over time, it will be increasingly seen that alternative ideas, those alternatives to Krishna consciousness, don't work. They fail. So we're here for the long haul. Now one item, there is a purport in 4th canto where Prabhupada talks about rape, and that's gotten a lot of internet play. Everything gets a lot of internet play. So that subject matter was discussed at the latest BBT meeting, and from many different points of view. And we're going to be coming out with a proposal about that for devotee comment.
Thank you. Next question.
Who else has a question bubbling up?
Well, I have one, Maharaj.
Oh.
Okay. It's not planted. That's a real quick. You just came out with a book.
I did.
And what's the name of it?
It's not quite out, it's almost out, and some copies are out. It's called Vanity Karma, Ecclesiastes, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Meaning of Life.
Okay. So you just came out with that book, and we know that many devotees have come out with some wonderful books. We were talking about one yesterday, you and I. And some of them also, I think one could argue, at least from an external point of view, are written perhaps in easier ways to understand than Srila Prabhupada's books, or even more contemporary language that some people, at least in certain parts of the world, can relate to better. So that's how many years since Srila Prabhupada passed away. It's only, right, it's been 30-something years. Now, going forward, it'll be more and more years, of course. So how do the BBT is especially, well, it prints many books, but especially, of course, Srila Prabhupada's. So how do you see how's this going to play out?
I see that as a sign of good health. The books when the books present Srila Prabhupada's philosophy and they point us back to Srila Prabhupada's books, it only makes Prabhupada more important. makes his books and his teachings more important.
Do you see a time when they could kind of cast a bigger shadow than Srila Prabhupada's books, and then gradually we refer to them less?
That becomes very hard. You'd have to cast an awfully big shadow to overshadow Prabhupada's books.
Thank you. Next question.
I wonder what kind of questions we gradually following upstairs to someone.
Same on Here you go.
Hare Krishna.
Shall we? Yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I'm not sure where you are. Okay.
Okay, as we spoke earlier about the internet and our presence on the internet and social media, so a lot of questions come up about the editing of Prabhupada's books. In fact, just yesterday I saw someone comment that that a draft, or the first draft is just a draft and it's not a manuscript, and that we should just stick with what Prabhupada said or wrote, what was written earlier. So how are we to understand what's
How are we to understand? There was a slide unrelated to what was being spoken about earlier, but there was a slide that said bbtedit.com. That's the place where most of these questions have been answered. The questions, the same sort of arguments keep coming up again and again and again. So we made one website where they've been addressed. One of the most important things that's available on that website is that you can actually see what revisions have been made to the Bhagavad Gita, which is the main focus of attention. The introduction and the first 8 chapters are online with the revisions shown. Because what I did is I had a copy of the book and I scribbled in the book. So that scribbled version is available online with comments, why this one, why this one, why this one, why this one, and with images from the original manuscripts that we have in the archives, so that you can refer to what Srila Prabhupada actually wrote. And then you can make a well-informed decision. Is this closer to Prabhupada or farther away? And I think you'll find that it's much closer to Prabhupada's intentions and what he actually said. Especially worth noting is the introduction, which is the only part that where Prabhupada's original recorded dictation, the actual sound, is still available. So you can listen to the recording, look at the book, and see the differences. For example, all the verses of Gita Mahatmya in Sanskrit, which Prabhupada speaks very strongly in the recording, and which were all just edited out of the first edition of Bhagavad Gita, and which are back in the second. The idea that this is a new one, they sort of try to keep coming up with something new. The manuscripts are just kind of first drafts. That is the most absurd rubbish I've ever heard. You know, it's like, the problem is that the manuscripts, when you look at change, you look at the first edition, you look at the second edition, and you say, oh my God, they've changed everything. Then you look at the manuscripts and you say, well, the changes are justified. What do we do about that? Well, you disparage the manuscripts. These manuscripts aren't really the manuscripts, they're just first drafts, they don't matter. Because you've got to get rid of the evidence somehow. Right? If you look at the evidence, if you look at the manuscript, the changes seem reasonable, they seem justified, they seem necessary. So then the answer is, oh, those are just first drafts. Did Prabhupada do a second draft? This is what he wrote. That's what that first draft is. It's the first and only draft. It's what he said. It's what he wanted to publish. And after that came editors who did a fantastic job, actually, considering 1967, 68, to have accomplished what they accomplished with their limited background in the philosophy and the Sanskrit was marvelous, all glories to them. But there were mistakes, there were things misconstrued. Mahabaho, that I think it was Yudhamanyu or another hero. He's Mahabaho, which means that he was greatly armed. He had lots of weapons. But for those of us who studied the books, Mahabaho means he had big, strong arms. But the editors didn't know that, so they made it greatly armed. Simple mistake, and you fix it. So these and other controversies are available, are discussed rather, bbtedit.com. There's a lot there, really a lot. And I think that it will answer most doubts of most reasonable people. Unfortunately, the internet is a place where the most uninformed and most foolish, if not to say absolutely mad people have equal stature with professors and experts. So, bbtedit.com. There it is. www. Okay? By the way, every now and then, we also get reasonable letters from people. Every now and then we get a very well-reasoned question. This was changed to this. It doesn't seem right. Is there a reason? And then we write back, and sometimes they say, well, I'm not satisfied. Could you explain that further? And sometimes they say, thank you very much. They're rare, actually, rare birds, those who write to us with reasonable, well-informed, well thought out issues. But it does happen. These rare things happen in this world. And we're happy when we get that sort of thought, because maybe they're right. So we look, and if they are right, which is also rare, but when they are, we say, okay, we made a mistake, and we fix it.
So down here, Maharaj, down here.
Yes?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Hand in hand with books goes education. I'm just wondering, as far as I know, the BBC doesn't have a very formal or structured education program with Prabhupada's books. That's usually handled by ISKCON colleges. Does the BBC Africa division have any such plans to solve the problem of devotees actually reading and understanding Prabhupada's books?
No, we don't. And it's an interesting issue that you bring up. At first blush, I would think, well, that's ISKCON's business, education and getting deeper into the books. And it very much is ISKCON's business, but it's also in the publisher's interest to promote that and to foster that. So I think we don't have any plans, and we haven't even discussed it, but it's good that you brought that up above the radar line. Thank you very much.
Maharaj, in the Lilamrita we read...
Closer, that microphone, please.
Sorry. In the Lilamrita we read how the Chaitanya Charitamrita was printed so quickly.
Yes.
And obviously when something's printed very quickly, there's not a lot of time for the editors to edit. Mm-hmm. What was your interactions with Srila Prabhupada post-production? Was there any...
Post-production on Chaitanya Charitamrita, after it was published? Not much, really. Srila Prabhupada was pleased. He'd set as Dwarkavasini said, you set a high goal. Prabhupada, we were publishing one book every 2 months. And that was a big deal. Start to finish, to take a dictation and turn it into a printed book. Once every 2 months, we came out with a new 400-page book. That's 6 books a year, not bad. But Prabhupada was ahead of us by 17. And he said, he came and toured our facility, our setup in Los Angeles. He liked what he saw, all modern equipment. And then the next morning on his walk, he said, but you're 17 books behind me. I think you can finish these books in 2 months. And the person in charge said, Srila Prabhupada, that's impossible. And Prabhupada said, what's the use of your being American then? And if you don't do it, you're useless. So the devotees saw that Prabhupada was serious and sat down and made plans. And 2 months later, 17 books were together. I think we never had so much fun in all our lives. It was wonderful. But afterwards, Prabhupada didn't say, and that's another thing, Prabhupada didn't look back. There's a question, why didn't he say something about this book? Prabhupada went forward. When he finished Bhagavad Gita, he went on to Bhagavatam. When he had moved on in Bhagavatam, and wanted Chaitanya Charitamrita, he finished that. When he finished that, he went on to Bhagavatam. He didn't look back and say, could we revise this, could we revise that? He just went forward. If there were mistakes, it was our business. But he didn't, he just kept going. And that was also our situation. Why, if there were mistakes, why didn't you see them in 1975? We were moving forward. Prabhupada was rushing. Prabhupada was overloading us with new work. We didn't have time to look back and say, what about this, what about that? Only after Prabhupada's disappearance, he stopped, there was no more new work. Then we had time to go back and see these things. And also, so many thousands of devotees were reading and reading and reading for many years. They're the ones actually who brought to our attention, what about this, what about this, what about this? And the what about this became, especially in the case of Bhagavad Gita, so numerous that we said, all right, let's look at the whole thing. Tribhanga, where is Tribhanga? There is a kind of a vague reference point. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, will e-books eventually diminish or destroy book publications within the BBT?
Will e-books eventually diminish or destroy printed publications? I doubt it. I just attended Book Expo America, which is the largest publishing event in North America. And a person spoke there from Nielsen, which is the statistics company, surveys and statistics. And the fellow from Nielsen reported that over the last maybe 5 years, e-books have just been going, zoom, just been soaring. And this year, they've plateaued and even dipped a little bit in comparison to printed books. So it seems that that huge angle, which seemed like it was going to eclipse everything, has, as many trends do, sort of flattened out a little bit. He also reported that in a survey of young people, I forget the age, forgive me, but they were, I suppose high school age or college age, there was a distinct, if not preference, a very strong bias in favor of printed books. So printed books aren't going to go away anytime soon. When radio came, that was going to be the end of newspapers. When television came, that was going to be the end of the radio. When the internet came, that was going to be the end of everything. Books have a long history. I don't see them disappearing anytime soon. But e-books are great. I love traveling around with a whole library of Srila Prabhupada's books. And so we are publishing Srila Prabhupada's books as e-books. Almost all of them are available in English, and many books in other languages also. So that's something we want to keep up with. My book will also be available as an e-book. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I was reading children's books, but the stories in the books are not accurate according to Srila Prabhupada's
children's books and storybooks may not be accurate.
But what I'm asking is, but they're not printed by BBT.
No.
And I'm asking if BBT does print any children's books.
Does BBT print any children's books? No, we don't. We actually got an explicit instruction from Srila Prabhupada. BBT is not meant for children's books. So there were other publishers at that time, Bala Books, which one of my godbrothers started, and Prabhupada encouraged them. But the BBT's business is not children's books. Is it Medved or who's it? Yes. Can't see.
Maharaj, I don't know if you'd like to address it, but I heard that there are many lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave in Hindi. And that have never been transcribed even.
Yeah, I think there are. Unfortunately, I think not as many of the Hindi lectures were recorded, but there is a stock of lectures in Hindi in the archives, and the archives is looking for good Hindi transcribers. There are also portions of conversations in Bengali. So if there are Hindi or Bengali knowing devotees or native speakers who would like to be involved in the work of the Bhaktivedanta archives, you could contact any of us and we'll put you in touch. It's a great service listening to Prabhupada and getting it out there.
So thank you very much, Jayadvaita Swami. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.